At Sarah's birthday dinner at my in-laws' house, I was sitting at the familiar mahogany table, running my fingers nervously along the edge of my wine glass. The warm glow of the chandelier cast dancing shadows across the cream-coloured walls, and the scent of my mother-in-law's homemade lasagna filled the air with comfort and tradition. This dining room had seen so many family gatherings over the years, but tonight felt different somehow. My chest was tight with an emotion I couldn't quite name as I watched Sarah laugh with her cousins, her face flushed with joy and perhaps a little too much wine. She looked so carefree, so genuinely happy, and I found myself thinking about all the late nights I'd spent hunched over spreadsheets and tax documents, trying to untangle the financial mess that had been consuming her life for months. The weight of carrying everyone's financial burdens was sitting heavy on my shoulders. Like a backpack filled with rocks that I'd been carrying for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to walk without it. My hands were slightly trembling as I reached for my water glass, the exhaustion from months of being everyone's financial lifeline finally catching up with me. When my mother-in-law stood up, tapping her fork gently against her wine glass, the room gradually fell silent. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears as she looked directly at me, and I felt my heart start to race with anticipation and anxiety. "To Marie," she began, her voice wavering with emotion, "who has been the backbone of our family's financial stability. Without your expertise, your patience, your countless hours of guidance, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight, free from the worry that used to keep us awake." I felt heat rise to my cheeks as everyone turned to look at me. The genuine appreciation in their faces was overwhelming, almost suffocating in its intensity. My throat felt tight as I tried to swallow past the lump that was forming there. "You've given us something that money can't buy," my mother-in-law continued, her voice growing stronger with conviction. "Peace of mind. The knowledge that we can actually plan for our future instead of just hoping for the best." Everyone raised their glasses and I could see the gratitude shining in their eyes. Sarah's brother, who usually kept his emotions carefully hidden, was nodding with what looked like genuine respect. Even my father-in-law, a man of few words, was looking at me with something that resembled awe. But as I raised my own glass with hands that were still shaking slightly, I felt a familiar knot forming in my stomach. The appreciation was real. I could feel it radiating from every person at the table. But it came wrapped in expectations that felt heavier than chains. When I opened my mouth to respond, my voice came out smaller than I intended, barely above a whisper. "To Sarah," I managed, forcing myself to look at my sister-in-law's beaming face, who worked so incredibly hard this year to get her finances on track. "I'm proud of how far you've come, how you've taken control of your future." The room erupted in applause, warm and genuine, and Sarah reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Her palm was warm and slightly damp with emotion, and I could see tears gathering in the corners of her eyes. "Thank you," she mouthed silently, and I felt my heart clench with a mixture of love and overwhelming responsibility. As the conversation resumed around the table, flowing with laughter and family stories, I found myself studying each face. These people I loved so deeply, who had become my family through marriage, who trusted me with their most intimate financial fears and dreams. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice was whispering questions I didn't want to hear. When did helping become expected? When did my expertise become their entitlement? When did I stop being Marie and start being their personal financial advisor? The lasagna, which smelled absolutely divine and had been prepared with such love, tasted like cardboard in my mouth. I smiled and nodded at the right moments, laughed when everyone else laughed, but inside I felt like I was drowning in the weight of their collective gratitude and need. My mother-in-law had spent hours in the kitchen preparing this meal, and I could see the flour still dusting her apron, the small burn mark on her thumb from where she'd accidentally touched the hot casserole dish. The love in every detail was obvious, from the carefully folded napkins to the flowers she'd picked from her garden that morning. But even surrounded by all this warmth and affection, I felt strangely isolated, like I was watching the scene from behind glass. When my father-in-law raised his glass again later in the evening, his weathered hands steady despite his 73 years, I felt my chest tighten even more. "Marie," he said, his voice gravelly with age and emotion, "you've been our guardian angel. We don't know how we got so lucky to have you in our family." The words should have filled me with joy, but instead they made me feel like I was being crushed under the weight of their dependence. I forced another smile, took another sip of wine that had long since lost its taste, and wondered when being helpful had become such a burden. That night, after we finally got home, I sat alone in my home office, surrounded by the organized chaos of my professional life. The overhead light was too bright, casting harsh shadows across the towers of financial documents that seemed to multiply every week. Tax returns, budget spreadsheets, investment portfolios, retirement plans, insurance policies. The paper trail of my family's financial lives spread across every available surface like some kind of administrative avalanche. My desk, usually my sanctuary of order and control, looked like a war zone. Sarah's tax documents were still scattered where I'd left them that morning, marked with yellow sticky notes and red ink corrections. My in-laws' retirement planning folder sat open, pages of calculations and projections that had taken me weeks to complete. My brother-in-law's 401k analysis was half finished, waiting for me to find the time to explain compound interest for the fourth time this month. I rubbed my temples, feeling the familiar tension headache that had become my constant companion. The muscles in my neck were knotted so tight they felt like steel cables, and my shoulders ached from hunching over spreadsheets and calculator keys. When had my body started carrying the physical weight of everyone else's financial stress? My phone, sitting face up on the desk beside a cold cup of coffee I'd forgotten to drink, buzzed with a text from Sarah. The blue light from the screen felt too bright in the dim room. "Thank you for everything tonight," the message read, "and for everything always. I know I don't say it enough, but you've literally changed my life. I don't know where I'd be without you." Before I could even process that message fully, another one arrived from my mother-in-law's sweetheart. "Your father-in-law and I were just talking about how blessed we feel to have you in our family. We were completely lost before you came into our lives. You've given us hope for our retirement that we never thought we'd have. We love you so much." I stared at the messages, my vision blurring as tears I'd been holding back all evening finally started to fall. The words on the screen became watery and distorted, but I could still feel their weight pressing down on my chest like a physical force. The messages were beautiful, heartfelt, genuine, and they made me feel like I was suffocating. I set the phone face down and buried my face in my hands, my shoulders shaking with silent sobs I'd been suppressing for months. The leather chair that usually felt so comfortable now seemed to be swallowing me whole, and the familiar smell of my office, usually so comforting with its hints of paper and ink, and the lavender candle I sometimes lit during long work sessions, now felt stifling. The clock on my desk, a gift from my first accounting firm, ticked loudly in the silence. Each second felt like an accusation, another moment spent thinking about work, another moment stolen from my own life. Another tick closer to burning out completely. I opened my laptop with trembling fingers, the screen's blue glow illuminating my tear-streaked face. My calendar for the week looked like a battlefield of obligations Tuesday evening. Review Sarah's student loan consolidation options. Wednesday after work, help my brother-in-law understand his 401k rollover. Thursday night, create a comprehensive budget analysis for my in-laws' new fixed income reality. Saturday morning, meet with Sarah to discuss her first-time homebuyer options. Sunday afternoon, family dinner where someone would inevitably ask another financial question that would turn into a 3-hour consultation session. When had my personal time become completely consumed by other people's financial needs? When had my expertise become their lifeline? When had helping family become a second full-time job that I never clocked out of? I pulled out a yellow legal pad, the same kind I'd used throughout law school and my early accounting days, and started writing. Not financial plans or budget analyses or investment strategies, but something entirely different, something that scared me with its necessity. At the top of the page, I wrote in shaky handwriting boundaries I need to set. Underneath, my pen hovered over the paper for long minutes before I found the courage to continue. 1. No more financial consultations during family dinners. 2. No more emergency money calls after 9 p.m. 3. No more doing their taxes for free while they complain about having to pay a professional for other services. 4. No more feeling guilty for charging family members for complex financial work. That takes me weeks to complete. The list grew longer as the emotions I'd been suppressing poured out through my pen. 5. No more sacrificing my own financial goals to fund their financial education. 6. No more being the default solution to every money problem. 7. No more feeling responsible for everyone else's financial security while neglecting my own emotional well-being. My handwriting became more erratic as the tears kept falling, smudging the ink and making some words illegible. But I kept writing, the act itself feeling like a kind of liberation. 8. No more pretending that being appreciated is enough payment for professional-level work. 9. No more being the family's unpaid financial therapist, accountant, and investment advisor all rolled into one. The clock now showed 12:23 a.m. I'd been sitting in my office for over 2 hours, and the stack of family financial documents seemed to mock me from every corner of the room. Sarah's credit card statements, my in-laws' medical bills, insurance policies that needed reviewing, investment accounts that needed rebalancing, the never-ending cycle of other people's financial needs that had consumed my life. I closed the laptop with more force than necessary, the sharp sound echoing in the quiet room. Tomorrow, I decided, looking at my reflection in the dark window, I was going to have a different kind of conversation with my family. Not about their money, but about my boundaries. Not about their financial goals, but about my emotional limits. As I turned off the office light and walked toward the bedroom, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. A tiny spark of hope mixed with terrifying uncertainty. The hallway felt longer than usual, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors, but for the first time in ages. I felt like I was walking towards something instead of just carrying an impossible weight. The next morning, I woke up with a strange mixture of determination and anxiety churning in my stomach. The sunlight streaming through my bedroom curtains felt different somehow, brighter and more hopeful. But my hands were still trembling as I reached for my phone to call Sarah. My heart was pounding as I dialed her number, each ring feeling like it lasted an eternity. When she answered, her voice was warm and sleepy, probably still in bed with her coffee and morning news routine. "Good morning, sunshine. What's up? Do you have another brilliant financial strategy to share with me?" The casual assumption in her voice, the automatic expectation that I was calling about her money, hit me like a physical blow. I had to take a deep breath before I could speak. "Sarah, I was wondering if you'd like to meet for coffee this morning. There's something important I need to discuss with you about your financial planning." "Oh!" Her voice immediately perked up with excitement. "Did you find a better investment option? Or maybe a new tax strategy? I'm so lucky to have you as my personal financial advisor." The words personal financial advisor echoed in my head as I gripped the phone tighter. It's not exactly that. Can we meet at our usual place in an hour?" "Of course, I'll be there." "Should I bring any documents? My latest bank statements, maybe?" "No," I said, my voice coming out firmer than I expected. "Just bring yourself. We need to talk." The drive to the cafe felt like driving to a job interview, or maybe a breakup conversation. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel, and I kept rehearsing what I wanted to say, the words getting tangled in my mind. The familiar route through downtown, past the bank where I'd helped Sarah open her first real savings account, past the credit union where we'd negotiated her car loan, felt like a tour of all the ways I'd become indispensable to her financial life. When I arrived at the small cafe near her apartment, the one with the chipped blue paint and mismatched chairs where we'd had so many of our financial planning sessions, Sarah was already there. She'd claimed our usual table by the window, the one where the morning light was best for reviewing documents, and where we'd celebrated every small victory in her journey toward financial stability. She looked radiant, her hair still damp from her morning shower, wearing the professional blazer I'd helped her pick out for job interviews. There was something different about her posture, more confident, more self-assured than the anxious young woman who'd first asked for my help 2 years ago. "I ordered your usual," she said, gesturing to a black coffee that was already waiting for me. "And I got my caramel macchiato with extra whipped cream, because I figure if we're having a serious financial planning session, I need all the sugar I can get." I sat down across from her, my hands wrapped around the warm coffee mug like it was an anchor. The familiar routine that had once felt comforting now felt like a costume I was about to take off. "Sarah," I began, my voice quieter than I intended, "I've been thinking a lot about your financial journey over the past 2 years." Her eyes lit up with anticipation. "I know. Can you believe how far I've come? My credit score hit 720 last week. And my emergency fund has 3 months of expenses now." I never thought I'd be the person who gets excited about her savings account balance. The pride in her voice was genuine and infectious, and I felt a surge of maternal affection that made my chest tight. "That's exactly what I want to talk about." I said, stirring my coffee with deliberate slowness. You've made incredible progress. Your debt is almost completely gone, your savings account is growing steadily, and most importantly, you actually understand your budget now. I do, she beamed, her whole face lighting up. I actually look forward to my monthly budget reviews now. It's like a report card that I know I'm going to ace. Sarah, I said, leaning forward across the small table, all of that progress, all of those achievements, they're yours, not mine. She looked confused, her eyebrows furrowing. But you set everything up. You created all the spreadsheets, you negotiated with my credit card companies, you restructured my student loans, you taught me about compound interest. I helped you get started, I interrupted gently, but Sarah, you're the one who's been making the daily choices. You're the one who stopped eating out 5 times a week. You're the one who picked up that weekend consulting gig. You're the one who stuck to the budget even when it meant saying no to things you wanted. She was quiet for a moment, turning her coffee cup in her hands, the whipped cream slowly melting into spirals. But what if I mess up? What if I make the wrong investment choice? What if I forget to pay something important? What if I lose track of my budget and everything falls apart? The fear in her voice was real and raw, and I felt my heart ache for her. But I also recognized something else, the same fear I'd been carrying for months. The terror of letting go of control, of trusting someone else to succeed without my constant oversight. Then you'll learn from it, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. Sarah, you're 28 years old. You have an MBA from a respected university. You manage complex marketing campaigns for a tech company, coordinating budgets and timelines and multiple stakeholders. You are absolutely capable of managing your own finances. Her hand was warm under mine, and I could feel her pulse racing. Are you firing me as your client? She asked. And despite the seriousness of the moment, we both started laughing. I'm not firing you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'm graduating you. A month later, I was surprised to receive a call from my mother-in-law on a Tuesday evening. I was just finishing up some client work, the familiar routine of balancing books and analyzing cash flows that had become my daily rhythm, when my phone rang with her special ringtone. Marie, honey, she said, and I could hear excitement bubbling in her voice like champagne. We need to talk to you and David about something absolutely wonderful. Can you both come over for dinner this weekend? We have some news that we're just bursting to share. The anticipation in her voice was contagious, and I found myself smiling for the first time in days. Of course we can come. Is everything okay? You sound almost giddy. More than okay, sweetheart. So much more than okay. We'll explain everything on Saturday, but Marie, thank you. Thank you so much. You'll understand what I mean this weekend. Saturday evening arrived with one of those perfect spring days that made everything seem possible. The drive to my in-laws' house took us through the neighborhood where I'd grown up, past the park where David and I had our first date, past the small church where we'd gotten married 5 years ago. The familiar sights felt like a comfort blanket, wrapping me in memories of simpler times. When we arrived, the house was glowing with warm light from every window, and I could smell my father-in-law's famous pot roast even before we reached the front door. The scent was rich and comforting, mixed with the aroma of fresh bread and something sweet baking in the oven. The dining room was set with their best china, the same dishes they'd used for our wedding reception, and candles flickered in the crystal candlesticks that had been my mother-in-law's grandmother's. But there was something extra in the air tonight, anticipation. Joy and maybe even a little mischief dancing in the warm candlelight. After dinner, which was filled with laughter and stories and the comfortable rhythm of family conversation, my in-laws exchanged meaningful glances. My mother-in-law disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a manila folder and a bottle of champagne that looked expensive, the kind they usually saved for major celebrations. Marie, David, my father-in-law began, his weathered hands steady as he placed the folder on the table. Do you remember when Marie helped us understand our retirement accounts last year? When she spent all those evenings showing us how to consolidate our investments and maximize our social security benefits? My heart started racing, though I wasn't sure why. Of course I remember. It was a complex project. Complex doesn't even begin to cover it, my mother-in-law said, her eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. Marie, sweetheart, we just got the final numbers from our financial advisor. Because of the changes you suggested, because of the restructuring you helped us implement, we're going to have $180,000 more in retirement than we originally projected. I felt my jaw drop and David reached over to squeeze my hand. What? I whispered. $180,000. My father-in-law repeated, his voice thick with emotion and disbelief. The investment reallocation alone, the way you helped us move everything from those high-fee funds into low-cost index funds, is projected to earn us an extra $120,000 over the next 15 years. And the Social Security timing strategy you recommended, waiting until full retirement age instead of taking early benefits, will add another $60,000 to our lifetime benefits. My mother-in-law was fumbling with the champagne bottle, her hands shaking with excitement. Marie, we wanted to share this moment with you because none of it would have happened without your expertise. We were completely lost before you stepped in. We were going to make so many expensive mistakes. The cork popped with a loud sound that made everyone jump and then laugh, and champagne foam spilled onto the white tablecloth. We were going to cash out my 401k to pay off the house, my father-in-law continued. We were going to take Social Security at 62 because we were scared the money would run out. We were going to keep all our savings in that savings account, earning practically nothing. Every single one of those decisions would have cost us tens of thousands of dollars, my mother-in-law added, pouring champagne into crystal flutes with hands that were still trembling with joy. You didn't just help us plan for retirement, Marie. You saved our retirement. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes as the magnitude of what they were saying hit me. This wasn't just gratitude for helping with a budget crisis or explaining a tax form. This was life-changing money, security for their golden years, peace of mind that would last for decades. We have something for you, my mother-in-law said, sliding an envelope across the table with a trembling hand. It's not nearly enough to repay what you've given us, but we wanted you to know in a concrete way how much your help has meant to our future. Inside the envelope was a check for $15,000 and a handwritten note in my mother-in-law's careful script. For the financial advisor who became our daughter, and the daughter who became our hero. Use this for something special, something just for you. I stared at the check, my vision blurring with tears. The amount was more than I'd ever been paid for any single consulting project. More than some people made in months, but more than that. It represented recognition of the value of my work, acknowledgement that my time and expertise had worth beyond family obligation. I can't accept this, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Your family? I didn't help you for money. I did it because I love you. We know that, my father-in-law said, his own eyes bright with emotion. That's exactly why we want you to have it. You gave us your evenings, your weekends, your expertise, your patience when we asked the same questions over and over. You treated our financial future like it was your own family's future, because we are your family. My mother-in-law reached across the table to take my hands in hers. Marie, you work so hard for everyone else. When was the last time you did something purely for yourself? When was the last time you bought something you wanted instead of something you needed? I couldn't remember. The realization hit me like a physical impact. Between helping family members and building my own practice, I couldn't remember the last time I'd spent money on something frivolous. Something that brought me joy instead of serving some practical purpose. As we toasted with the expensive champagne, the bubbles tickling my nose and the taste bright and celebratory on my tongue, I realized something fundamental had shifted in our family dynamic. This wasn't me giving until I was empty and them taking until I had nothing left. This was a more balanced exchange. Recognition and reciprocity, love that flowed both ways. For the first time in months, I felt like a valued family member instead of just a resource to be tapped when money problems arose. It's been 18 months since that transformative birthday dinner, and our family dynamics have evolved in ways I never could have imagined. Sarah's financial coaching business is thriving beyond her wildest dreams. She now has 23 regular clients, a waiting list 3 months long, and she's been invited to speak at financial literacy conferences. Her office, a small but bright space above a coffee shop downtown, is decorated with thank you cards from clients who've achieved their first emergency funds, paid off their student loans, bought their first homes. When she calls me now, which happens maybe once a week, it's not to ask for help with her own finances. Instead, she calls to share success stories, to brainstorm solutions for challenging client situations, to celebrate milestones. Last month, she told me about helping a young couple buy their first house, and the pride in her voice reminded me of why I fell in love with financial planning in the first place. Marie, she said during our most recent conversation. "I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. It's not about the money. It's about the confidence, the feeling of being in control of your own life. Every time I help someone create their first budget, I remember how it felt when you taught me to do mine. My in-laws have transformed their retirement from a source of anxiety into an adventure. They've taken 4 major trips in the past year, purchased a small beach condo in Florida, and started teaching financial literacy classes at their church. The couple who once lay awake at night worrying about having enough money for basic needs now spend their evenings planning their next adventure. You gave us more than financial security. My mother-in-law told me at Christmas. You gave us dreams we thought we were too old to have. They've also become advocates for financial education, sharing their story with friends and neighbours who are facing similar retirement challenges. My father-in-law, who was once too embarrassed to admit he didn't understand his 401k statements, now volunteers with AARP helping other seniors navigate their retirement planning. Lisa and her husband achieved their early retirement goal 18 months ahead of schedule and have started a non-profit organisation focused on teaching financial literacy to high school students. Their program has already reached over 500 teenagers in our school district. Watching our family transform the way we think about money inspired us to think bigger, Lisa explained when she launched the nonprofit. If we could change our family's financial future in just 2 years, imagine what we could do for an entire generation of young people. My own practice has evolved in ways that continue to surprise me. The Family Financial Independence program I developed now has a staff of 4 and a waiting list that stretches 6 months. Families come to us not to have their money managed, but to learn to manage it themselves, to break cycles of financial dependence and anxiety that have persisted for generations. But the most profound change has been in my relationship with my work and with myself. I no longer feel like I'm drowning in other people's financial crises. Instead, I feel like I'm part of a community where everyone contributes their strengths and supports each other's growth. My expertise is valued and compensated appropriately, but it's no longer the only thing that defines my worth in our family. The monthly family dinners have become something I actually look forward to instead of dreading. They're celebrations of everyone's achievements, opportunities to share knowledge and support each other's goals, rather than crisis management sessions where I'm expected to solve every problem. Last week, Sarah gave me a gift that meant more than any paycheck. A framed photo from her business's first anniversary celebration. The inscription read, "To the woman who taught me that the best gift isn't solving someone's problems. It's teaching them they're capable of solving their own. Thank you for believing in me before I believed in myself." Looking at that photo now, displayed prominently on my office wall next to my accounting certifications and MBA diploma, I realized that the real transformation wasn't in anyone's bank account or investment portfolio. It was in our relationships, in how we see each other and ourselves. We went from being a family, where one person solved everyone's problems, to being a family where everyone has the tools to solve their own problems, and the wisdom to ask for help when they need it. We went from a dynamic of dependence and resentment to one of mutual support and celebration. The check my in-laws gave me that night is framed in my office as well, not because of the amount, but because of what it represents recognition that expertise has value. That family doesn't mean working for free, that love and fair compensation can coexist beautifully. And perhaps most importantly, I've learned that teaching someone to fish really is better than giving them fish. Not just for them, but for the person doing the teaching. Watching the people I love discover their own capabilities, build their own confidence, achieve their own goals. That satisfaction runs deeper than any gratitude they could express. Sarah recently told me something that crystallized everything I'd been feeling. You know what the difference is between the old way and the new way? Before, I felt like I needed you. Now I feel like I choose to learn from you. That makes all the difference in the world. And that, more than any amount of money in any bank account, feels like true wealth.